Joining us now is film critic Richard Crouse. Morning, Richard. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Sure, of course. So, Richard, you were with us on SCTV just moments after the news broke of her death. Since then, we've seen an overwhelming outpouring of reaction to her passing. Talk to me about some of the moving tributes that we've seen.
It's been really lovely to see how social media has responded to the passing of Katherine O'Hara. It's normally a dumpster fire on X and, a lot of the other sites, but we've been seeing such lovely tributes like this one from Michael McKeon. He says, Katherine's knowledge of humanity was always at the center of her comedy, no matter how absurd the character or loopy the material. Here's the interesting part of this tweet, though. She could play heartless because she was warm, brainless because she was brilliant, careless because she truly cared. Everyone loved her and everyone learned from her. This is a deep loss. That's just one of the thousands, probably tens of thousands. Macaulay Culkin, who of course starred alongside her on Home Alone, said, "Mama, I thought we had more time. I want more. I wanted to sit in a chair next to you. I heard you, but I had so much more to say." And it goes on like that. Pedro Pascal, even Prime Minister Mark Carney posted a tribute to Katherine O'Hara. So this outpouring of love that she's receiving now, I think really is part of her legacy. She's obviously a gifted comedic performer who created these iconic roles in almost every decade of her 50 years on screen. If you look back at SCTV and her work there's the impressions of Lucille Ball and Katharine Hepburn and Brooke Shields and Meryl Streep. You think about playing Kevin's mom in Home Alone, Dahlia Dietz in Beetlejuice. You've got her on Schitt's Creek as Moira Rose, and now as one of the studio heads on the studio, or deposed studio head, I guess, on the studio. And each of these characters were unique and interesting. And just as Michael McKean said, really are rewatchable and so interesting and layered, because while many of them are kind of over the top, they are grounded in a real humanity that made her characters, no matter how outrageous they may have been, believable and authentic feeling. And that's the gift. So her legacy, I think, is not only 50 years of entertaining us, but I think it's also in the inspiration that she provided to a few generations of comedians and comedic actors who came after her, who learned from her, who watched her. She really was one of the best to ever do it.
In addition to being hilarious and talented, we keep hearing from people how kind she was, those that she worked with, those who met her over the years. And I know that you had the opportunity to interview her several times. So tell me about, some of the moments that stood out to you when you met her.
Well, she was always lovely in interviews, was giving, was willing to talk, but she was really funny in interviews, which was, perhaps not unexpected. And then later, because, she's from Toronto and I live here, I would often see her at events and things like that. And she would be really gracious and warm, always have a moment to have a quick conversation. She was really, truly kind. And we were not friends. I'm not suggesting that. We were, people who came together professionally from time to time when she had a movie or a television show out. But she always, outside of those experiences with her, always had time to say hello. And that is very rarely the case. And in Katherine O'Hara's case, it really felt like it was genuine, like it was authentic, much like the stuff that made her art so great. I think that's what informed her real personality, her off-camera personality, and made her so beloved by so many people.
O'Hara rose to fame alongside a cast of iconic Canadian comedians like Martin Short, John Candy, and of course Eugene Levy. How did she stand out among this group?
I think that SCTV is remarkable for a number of reasons. A, they were fearless. I think that there is something that goes along with creating this show that they didn't expect a whole lot of people to be watching in the early days anyway. And so there were kind of no rules, and they created a new kind of comedy. Certainly in Canada, we weren't doing anything much like that on television, maybe on stages at Second City and, around the country and places like that. But on television, what SCTV did was new, and it was fresh, and it was young, and it was invigorating, a whole generation of comedians to be fearless. And I think Catherine O'Hara stood out amongst this ensemble because of her ability to embody the characters that she was playing. But I also think part of her genius was her ability, and this comes, I would imagine, from her Second City training in improvisation, to work with this ensemble and make sure that everyone was able to share the spotlight, make sure that everyone was presented in their best possible way. And, again, that speaks to her giving personality, but also I think is one of the keys that made SCTV so special is that they really felt like a team. They felt like they were working together and not trying to outshine one another. And Catherine O'Hara was certainly, I think, a big part of that dynamic.
The loss of a true Canadian legend, film critic Richard Crouse. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you for having me.